The blind spot, bureaucracy, policy, and missed alarms. While the ring widened, the quiet failure lived on paper. The Navy had a policy that should have starved Walker at the source: two-person integrity on all keying material, strict custody logs, and verified burn on expiration. It was signed, briefed, and filed. Then tempo bent it. Ships turned around fast. Watch bills ran thin at 20. When operations pressed, compliance slid to the corner of the desk. Stakes were simple and brutal. Every time a single sailor handled keys alone, every time a burn bag sat uninspected till morning, the river kept flowing. Keys that should have died on Friday lived through Monday. Circuits that should have gone dark stayed readable. The difference between procedure and practice was the gap Walker walked through. Action looked like routine. A comms chief initialed a destruction log after watching ashes in a tray, except he'd stepped out to answer a secure line and returned to embers he didn't actually witness. A junior watchstand assigned for a key list because the other qualified body was troubleshooting a transmitter. The log read, two-person. The reality was get it done. In shore facilities, contractors wheeled copy machines between vaults, leaving grey areas about what crossed which threshold. Temporary, safe combinations stayed posted behind a magnet because the new crew hadn't memorized them yet. Here's the exact moment the system breaks. 1:58, red lights humming, coffee gone bitter. The radio room smells like hot dust and solvent. A junior RM2 stands with a key list in one hand and a burn bag in the other, waiting for the second set of eyes. The chief leans in the doorway, headset around his neck, one ear on a secure line that won't stop chirping. "We'll do it together in a minute," he says, and vanishes for a minute that doesn't end. The room breathes. The clock rolls to 1:59. The sailor hesitates. He knows the ritual by heart. Both present, both read, both watch the flame until grey turns to nothing. He can hear the slide from training, two signatures, one fire. He also hears the ship, a transmitter hiccup on circuit, an ops officer pinging for a route change, the throb of generators under the deck like a second pulse. He tells himself it's fine to start the burn. He tells himself the chief will be right back. He pops the safe, fingers dry and clumsy on cold steel. A single sheet sticks to his wrist. Static. He peels it off and lays it on the tray. He reads the line aloud to an empty room because that's what the rule says: date, circuit, destruction authorized. He strikes a match. Sulfur blooms sharp and fast. The flame takes the corner, curls the edge, black turns to lace. The phone in the passageway rings again, urgent now. He glances just once. The match guttering in his fingers bites his skin. Reflex. He flinches, drops the stick, and pinches out the pain. When he looks back, the sheet isn't gone. It's half a ghost, numbers still legible in the unburned block, a rectangle of life in a tray of pretense. He crushes with the tongs, blows, stirs ash until it looks convincing. The room stings with the smell of almost. He tells himself he'll finish it when the chief returns. He tells himself this is still by the book because his voice said the words. The clock flips to 200. The chief returns with a headset apology and a pen. "We good," the sailor nods before his mouth catches up. The chief signs the second line without leaning over the tray. Two signatures. One flame that no one truly watched. Procedure just turned into theater. Across the hall, the burn bag waits for a second check that doesn't happen. A corner, still damp from humidity and haste, clings to a plastic seam. Later, the bag will sit, just till dry. Then someone will forget it until morning. Destroyed gets a checkmark. Numbers live past the ink. Crypto accountability audits existed, but during heavy deployments, commanders requested postponements with a sentence that always worked: mission requirements. The audit teams, already under-resourced, stacked waivers in folders, promising to catch up next quarter. Meanwhile, compartmentalization blurred. When a ship pulled into port for 24 hours, everyone touched everything to make the next sortie. Just for today became a pattern. Impact built quietly. Keys persisted longer than cycles. When rotation slipped, the Soviets didn't need to guess the next sheet. They had it from Whitworth's film. When an emergency rekey happened on paper but not in practice, Moscow rode through the bump with redundancy Walker had provided. The effect at sea felt like coincidence. A tail showing up where you didn't expect one. A radio check answered a little too fast by a shadow on your quarter. At desks, it looked like green check marks on compliance lines. The story didn't read breach. It read complete. There was a moment that could have changed the slope. A compliance memo landed on a commander's desk, flagged in red by a mid-career cryptologic officer who'd seen too many temporary fixes become permanent. It recommended immediate stand-downs for key handling, surprise burn inspections, and pulling clearances where logs looked soft. The commander initialed receipt, jotted concur, and sent it to staff for action. Staff logged it, scheduled a review, and shelved it when a carrier group slipped schedule and demanded bodies. The memo went quiet under a stapled operations update. Somewhere else, the human bill came due. A boomer's radio chief wrote a bland line in his log, burn complete, and went to rack with the taste of sulfur still in his mouth, and the picture of a half-gone sheet burned into his eyelids. On patrol day 5, a Soviet shadow turned up where probability said it shouldn't. The chief counted nights backward and found 200 like a bruise he couldn't stop pressing. He didn't write that part down. He carried it. Meanwhile, the paper trail masked the human trail. Training slides said 2-person integrity means 2 sets of eyes, 2 signatures, 1 flame. On the deck plates, 2 signatures sometimes meant a rubber stamp from a supervisor who trusted the kid he'd mentored. Trust is a gift in a crew. In cryptology, it's also a risk. Walker banked on that. He'd been the trainer, the supervisor, the guy they trusted to bend the rule without breaking it. He taught others the right way, while mapping where the shortcuts would never trigger alarms. Another policy should have pinched the ring, mandatory financial disclosure and follow-up for personnel with access to sensitive keys. It existed on paper, with thresholds for unexplained affluence. But the Navy's forms lagged real life. Cash-based gifts didn't trip bank alerts. Side businesses muddied the numbers. Command climates treated money questions as personal, not security. Investigators later found purchase receipts that would have justified a conversation. No one asked. Compartmentalization blurred in communications centers too. Broadcast centers grouped multiple nets for efficiency, letting a single operator see more than his billet needed. In theory, that boosted resilience. In practice, it widened the aperture for theft. Whitworth didn't have to beg favors. The architecture handed him the buffet. A better design would have split duties and blinded operators to adjacent circuits. That redesign sat in a proposal marked resource dependent. Burn procedures had their own quiet drift. Incinerators clogged, so crews burned in small trays, then dumped ash into standard trash. Verification meant poking grey fluff and calling it good. On a rainy night, a bag got set aside till dry, then forgotten. The next morning, nobody could swear how long it sat. The log still read destroyed. Paper died on schedule. Keys lived past it. Every bureaucracy writes itself a story about intent. Ours said, the enemy can't read us because our system is sound. But systems are habits dressed as policies. When tempo, trust, and thin staffing turn habit against policy, the story is a lullaby. The Ring thrived in that music. What nobody knew at the time was that the fixes we thought would be painful were cheaper than the cost of being read. Pausing a watchbill to do a real burn inspection takes minutes. Rebuilding the acoustic advantage after years of leaks takes budgets, shipyard schedules, and luck. The ledger wasn't obvious until later, when damage assessment teams lined up timelines and saw how many tails matched months of soft compliance. Then a smaller, humbler thing broke the trance. A single phone call, not a memo, domestic, messy human. It didn't cite policy, it named a man. And once his name was in a notebook at an FBI field office, the paper shield began to tear. The first cracks, confessions, tips, and a wife's line in the sand. The call didn't sound like a spy story. It sounded like an ex-wife who'd reached her limit. Barbara Walker had carried the secret since the late 1960s when she confronted John about papers that didn't belong in a family desk. He told her it would stop. It didn't. Years passed, kids grew up, and the money never matched the rank. By November 1984, Michael had joined the Navy, and that changed everything for her. If John was still in the game, He wasn't just risking strangers. He was pulling their son into the same shadow. Stakes were personal and national in the same breath. Barbara couldn't watch Michael disappear down the hall with a pouch he couldn't explain. She couldn't keep hearing John's late-night car, the garage door creak, the freezer shut. Silence had a taste now, metallic, like a penny pressed under her tongue. It lived in the house with her, in the hum of the refrigerator where she'd seen him hide things, in the soft thud of the mailbox, in the way Michael avoided her eyes when she asked simple questions. She stood at the sink more nights than she could count, hands in dishwater gone cold, rehearsing sentences she never spoke. If she called, she would break the family open. If she didn't, she might lose her son to a shadow he didn't understand. The calculus wasn't abstract. It was a list. Protect Michael or protect the name on the mailbox. Risk the shame that would ripple through church pews and navy towns, or risk a knock at midnight that wasn't hers to make. She imagined Michael standing on a deck he couldn't see the bottom of, a pouch in his hand, and felt a fear that tightened her chest until breath came in pieces. She tried silence. Silence hadn't protected anyone. So she picked up the phone, not to a hotline, but to a local FBI field office, the way a person calls when they're not sure how any of this works. Her fingers hovered over the rotary like they weighed a pound each. The click of each number sounded too loud in the kitchen. She thought of neighbors, of gossip, of John's eyes when he realized which crack had widened. Then she thought of Michael's shoulders as he left for duty the last time, too straight for someone that young. She made the last turn on the dial and lifted the receiver to a hum that felt like a cliff edge. When the agent answered, her voice came out smaller than she expected. She gave a name, a habit, a pattern. It didn't sound like evidence. It sounded like a plea and a promise to her son that she would choose him over the comfort of being quiet. Action started messy. Early tips can land soft when they come wrapped in divorce and years of resentment. An agent took notes, logged the call, asked follow-ups. Barbara's details were specific in a way that nagged. Dead drops disguised as errands, cash that arrived on no payday, a son carrying unknown bundles off a carrier. The Bureau did what it always does with an initial tip. Ran names through files, checked old mentions, looked for overlaps with unsolved leaks. At first, nothing lit up. Then other threads tugged. A separate source mentioned odd contact patterns in Navy message circuits. A field office flagged a curious bank deposit linked to a sailor's family. Inside the Bureau, analysts overlaid Barbara's timeline with anomalies the Navy had shrugged off as noise. The shapes started to match. Walker had been careful for years, but volume breeds pattern. Patterns invite maps. Barbara's second call was colder. She wasn't guessing anymore. She was drawing a line. She told an agent she believed John was still working for the Soviets and that Michael might be involved. That cut through the bureaucratic haze. Agents pulled travel records, watched post office boxes, and quietly requested support from Naval Criminal Investigative Service to understand what exactly a sailor on the Nimitz could touch. The answer was too much. Impact arrived in fragments. Mail covers picked up envelopes that moved on odd schedules. A surveillance team tailed John on a drive that made no sense unless you'd ever practiced counter-surveillance. He doubled back, changed lanes, paused at a grocery store, then continued to a park where nobody picnicked in November. He left empty-handed and returned hours later to check a spot under a bench. The FBI noted the bench, the timing, the man who never sat down. Meanwhile, Michael blinked, approached quietly and asked careful questions. He didn't confess. He flinched at details he shouldn't have known and stumbled on timelines he should have owned. A second conversation with a different tone opened a door. He'd carried pouches. He'd passed bundles. He didn't name his father first. The team already had the name. They asked him to keep going, controlled and watched. He agreed, not because he wanted to betray blood, but because he could see where this road ended if he didn't. Back in Barbara's kitchen, the cost hit home. She'd lit the fuse. Now strangers were watching her family, and the house felt like a stage. She told herself the line she'd drawn was the only one left. She wouldn't let her son sink into the same water. She asked the agent a question all informants eventually ask. Will he go to prison? The agent didn't promise anything. He promised to keep her safe. The Bureau moved from charts to boots. Dead drops got cameras. Park benches got eyes. Film canisters vanished and reappeared with fingerprints dusted. A Soviet contact surfaced on a schedule that felt human, not cinematic, late, cautious, routine. John checked a drop, paused like he smelled rain, then committed. The team logged the moment a careful man took a step he couldn't take back. Investigators now saw the ring as a shape, not a rumor. Whitworth's keys matched months of readable circuits. Arthur's access filled in contractor gaps. Michael's handoffs connected home to ship. Barbara's calls gave them the spine. The first cracks had widened into a fault line. What started as a domestic argument was now a live operation with an arrest window that had to be timed to the hour. The ocean had been speaking in bearings and shadows. In the end, it was a kitchen phone, a mother's boundary, and a son's hesitation that made the noise legible. The hunt turned active, quietly, patiently, relentlessly. Operation to catch a ghost, surveillance and sting. Catching John Walker meant getting inside a rhythm he'd refined for 18 years. The FBI built a clock around him. They started with mail covers, photographing the outside of every envelope that touched his life. Nothing flashy. Patterns, not prizes. Catalogs that never became purchases. Bank statements timed to trips. A P.O. box that only breathed on odd Tuesdays. The notes stacked until you could tell his week by the post office's smell. Then came the streets. Two-car tails at a distance, swaps every few blocks, radios quiet. Walker drove like a man who trusted his own instincts more than any map. He'd take two rights and a left, pause under freeway, change lanes for no reason but the feeling of being watched. The Bureau let him set the dance. If he drifted, they drifted. If he accelerated, they bled speed rather than close. Patience, not heroics. A park bench became a character. Nobody picnicked there in winter. Still, he'd swing by, stroll past, palm the underside, and keep walking. The team learned his tics. The head tilt, the glance across a street he'd just crossed, the moment he'd feign a shoelace check to scan gutters for chalk marks that meant a meeting. He wasn't meeting. He was reading the city the way he read circuits, looking for interruptions. Meanwhile, the Bureau tightened the net around Michael. Controlled deliveries are surgical when they work, and a mess when they don't. Agents asked him to carry a pouch just like before, to hand it to his father with the same casual shrug. Inside, the documents were marked and photographed. Outside, a silent camera watched the trunk of Walker's car inhale what his son had brought. Michael felt the strap bite into his shoulder the way guilt bites, slow, undeniable. The pouch was light by weight and heavy by meaning. He could feel the outline of a key card cased through the canvas, and beneath it, the cold neatness of pages that unlock things other people risk their lives to keep shut. He tried to breathe slow, to make his face a mask of ordinary. His body didn't believe him. Pulse up, mouth dry, the kind of tunnel hearing you get before you pass out. At the trunk, his father's nod was small, approving, familiar. Approval warmed him and hollowed him at the same time. He set the pouch down, and in that split second before the lid dropped, understood without euphemism what he'd been doing for months. He was helping move the very material he'd been trained to protect. Not consulting, not errands, keys, procedures, the skeleton of the Navy's voice. He closed the trunk and felt like he'd closed a door on the person he thought he was. Michael's jaw clenched when he closed it. The agents marked the time. The handoff proved the pipeline still flowed. Back at the bench, they went from eyes to fingerprints. A dead drop is only useful if it lives long enough to be touched. The team dusted the underside after he left, lifted partials that matched prior lifts from envelopes, and built the legal spine they'd need when they moved. No single touch would win the case. The accumulation would. Money talks in espionage, but it whispers in bank ledgers. Tracebacks found deposits that didn't match declared income, not flashy, not enough to scream spy, just enough to keep a cautious man afloat. The Bureau mapped his cash pickups to his park days. The lines overlapped with an impatience that made agents believe they were standing close to a live exchange schedule. They watched airports too. Walker liked the idea of distance. He'd book flights he didn't take, drive to short-stay lots, and loop terminals without walking in. A deco routine. Maybe, or just habit, a way to ensure the air felt uncomfortable before he handed off a canister in a place where everyone had their own reasons to look away. Tails learned to love boredom. The more boring the loop, the more likely it hid the one motion that mattered. A small break came from a normal errand. Walker mailed a package with too much care. The label was handwritten, the weight just off from what the contents claimed to be. The mail cover captured it.